If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome crew, new listeners, guys, gals, ghouls. Hop up on the mothership, secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high, get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners, and settle down snugly at mile marker 420 in colorful Colorado. This Sunday, January 5th, Monday, January 6th, for those of you across the pond and beyond. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, and Happy New Year. I hope this year is your best year yet. I've heard good things, but, who's to say? Who's to say? So I'm your host, TessaTNT, and we are broadcasting live from the Mile High Clubhouse tonight. If you're listening live right now, one thing has changed. For some reason, Spreaker is not allowing me to go live, so I'm doing a pre-record, which I'll upload shortly after the show, but yeah, that's been weird. But if you are listening or watching live, you can watch us over on Facebook under We Are Paradox Media, as well as YouTube. And, when you're over there on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. Give us a like. Give that little bell a kick. That way, next time we have a show, you will be made aware. As far as listening, we're on KPNL Radio, which you can find at KPNL Radio at kpnl-db.com. And basically anywhere else that you listen to your podcast, you should be able to find us there. But anywho, tonight is story time with me, TessaTNT. I know, don't get too excited. I actually enjoy it because I like to read, but at the same time, I don't have time, so this is my afforded time of almost 3 hours. and we've been reading Stephen King's Insomnia, and so far it's been pretty darn good, I must say so myself. We are on Chapter 15, Section 1. At 20 minutes past 7, a perfectly maintained Lincoln Town car of late 70s vintage drew up to the curb in front of Lois's house. Ralph, who had spent the last hour showering, shaving, and trying to get himself calmed down, stood on the porch and watched Lois get out of the back seat. Goodbyes were said, and girlish, sprightly laughter drifted across to him on the breeze. The Lincoln pulled away, and Lois started up her walk. Halfway along it, she stopped and turned. For a long moment, the two of them regarded each other from their opposite sides of Harris Avenue, seeing perfectly well in spite of deepening darkness and 200 yards which separated them. They burned for each other in that darkness like secret torches. Lois pointed a finger at him. It was very close to the hand gesture she'd made before shooting at dock number 3, but this didn't upset Ralph in the least. Intent, he thought. Everything lies in intent. There are few mistakes in this world, and once you get to know your way around, maybe there are no mistakes at all. A narrow, gray, glistening beam of force appeared at the end of Lois's finger and began to extend itself across the deepening shadows of Harris Avenue. A passing car drove blithely through it. The car's windows flashed a momentary bright, blind gray, and its headlights seemed to flicker briefly, but that was all. Ralph raised his own finger, and a blue beam grew from it. These two narrow casts of light met in the center of Harris Avenue and twined together like vine. Higher and higher, the interwoven pigtail rose, falling slightly as it went. Then Ralph curled his finger, and his half of the love knot in the middle of Harris Avenue winked out of existence. A moment later, Lois's half also disappeared. Ralph slowly descended the porch steps and began to cross his lawn. Lois came toward him. They met in the middle of the street, where in a very real sense they had met already. Ralph put his arms around her waist and kissed her. Section 2. You look different, Roberts. Younger somehow. Those words kept running through his head, recycling themselves like an endless tape loop, as Ralph sat in Lois's kitchen drinking coffee. He was unable to take his eyes off of her. She seemed easily 10 years younger and 10 pounds lighter than the Lois he'd gotten used to seeing over the last few weeks. Had she looked this young and pretty in the park this morning? Ralph didn't think so, but of course, she had been upset this morning, upset and crying, and he supposed that made a difference. Still. Yes, still. The tiny networks of wrinkles around the corners of her mouth were gone. So were the incipient turkey wattles beneath her neck and the sag of flesh, which had begun to hang from her upper arms. She had been carrying on this morning, crying, and was radiantly happy tonight, but Ralph knew that couldn't account for all the changes he saw. I know what you're looking at, Lois said. It's spooky, isn't it? I mean, it solves the question of whether or not all this has just been in our minds, but it's still spooky. We've found the fountain of youth. Forget Florida. It was right here in Derry all along. We found it? For a moment, she only looked surprised and a little wary, as she suspected he was teasing her, having her on. Of treating her as our Lois, then she reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Go in the bathroom and take a look at yourself. I know what I look like. Hell, I just finished shaving. Took my time over it, too. She nodded. You did a fine job, Ralph, but this isn't about your 5 o'clock shadow. Just look at yourself. Are you serious? Yes, she said firmly, I am. He had almost gotten to the door when she said, You didn't just shave, you changed your shirt, too. That's good. I didn't like to say anything, but that plaid one was ripped. Was it? Ralph asked. His back was to her, so she couldn't see his smile. I didn't notice. Section 3. He stood with his hands braced on the bathroom sink, looking into his own face for a good 2 minutes. It took him that long to admit to himself that he was really seeing what he thought he was seeing. The streaks of black lustrous as crow feathers which had returned to his hair were amazing, and so was the disappearance of the ugly pouches beneath his eyes, but the thing he could not seem to take his eyes away from was the way the lines in the deep cracks had disappeared from his lips. It was a small thing, but it was also an enormous thing. It was the mouth of a young man, and... Abruptly, Ralph ran a finger into his mouth, along the right-hand line of his lower teeth. He couldn't be entirely positive, but it seemed to him that they were longer, as if some of the wear had been rolled back. "Holy shit," Ralph murmured. And his mind returned to the sweltering day last summer, when he had confronted Ed DeMune on his lawn. Ed had first told him to drag up a rock and then confided in him that Derry had been invaded by sinister, baby-killing creatures, life-stealing creatures. All lines of force have begun to converge here, Ed had told him. How difficult that is to believe, but it's true. Ralph was finding it less difficult to believe all the time. What was getting harder to believe was the idea that Ed was mad. "If this doesn't stop," Lois said from the doorway, startling him, "we're going to have to get married and leave town, Ralph. Simone and Mina literally could not, take their eyes off of me." I made a lot of glib talk about some new makeup I'd gotten at a mall, but they didn't swallow it. A man would, but a woman knows what makeup can do and what it can't. They walked back to the kitchen, and although the auras were gone again for the time being, Ralph discovered he could see one anyway. A blush rising out of the collar of Lois's white silk blouse. Finally, I told them the only thing they would believe. "Well, what was that?" Ralph asked. "I said I met a man." She hesitated, and then, as the rising blood reached her cheeks and stained them pink, she plunged and had fallen in love with him. He touched her arm and turned her toward him. He looked at the small, clean crease in the bend of her elbow and thought how much he would like to touch it with his mouth. Or the tip of his tongue, perhaps. Then he raised his eyes to look at her. And was it true? She looked back with eyes that were all hope and candor. "I think so," she said in a small, clear voice. "Everything's so strange now. All I know for sure is that I want it to be true. I want a friend. I've been frightened and unhappy and lonely for quite a while now. The loneliness is the worst part of getting old, I think. Not the aches and pains, not the cranky bowels, or the way you lose your health after climbing a flight of stairs you could have just about flown up when you were 20, but being lonely." "Yes," Ralph said, "that is the worst. No one talks to you anymore. Oh, they talk at you sometimes, but that's not the same. And mostly it's like people don't even see you. Have you ever felt that way?" Ralph thought of Derry, of the old Crocs, a city mostly ignored by the hurry-to-work, hurry-to-play world which surrounded it, and nodded. "Ralph, would you hug me?" "My pleasure," he said, and pulled her gently into the circle of his arms. Section 4. Sometime later, rumpled and dazed but happy, Ralph and Lois sat together on the living room couch, a piece of furniture so stringently hobbit-sized it was really not much more than a love seat. Neither of them minded. Ralph's arm was around Lois's shoulder. She let her hair down, and he twined a lock of it in his fingers, musing upon how easy it was to forget the feel of a woman's hair, so marvelously different from the feel of a man's. She had told him about her card game, and Ralph had listened closely, amazed but not, he discovered, much surprised. There was a dozen or so of them who played every week or so at the Ludlow Grange for small stakes. It was possible to go home a $5 loser or a $10 winner, but the most likely result was finishing $1 ahead or a handful of change behind. Although there were a couple of good players and a couple of slumps, Lois counted herself among the former. It was mostly just a fun way to spend an afternoon. The Lady Old Croc version of chess tournaments and marathon gin rummy games. Only this afternoon, I just couldn't lose. I should have come home completely broke, what with all of them asking what kind of vitamins I was taking, and where I'd gotten my last facial, and all the rest of it. Who can concentrate on a silly game like deuces and jacks, man with an axe, natural sevens, take all, when you have to keep telling new lies and trying not to trip over the ones you've already told? It must have been hard, Ralph said, trying not to grin. It was very hard, but instead of losing, I just kept raking it in. And do you know why, Ralph? He did, but shook his head so she would tell him. He liked listening to her. It was their auras. I didn't always know the exact cards they were holding, but a lot of times I did. Even when I didn't, I could get a pretty clear idea of how good their hands were. The auras weren't always there, how they come and go, but even when they were gone, I played better than I ever have in my life. During the last hour, I began to lose on purpose, just so they wouldn't all hate me, and do you know something? Even losing on purpose was hard. She looked down at her hands, which had begun to twine together nervously in her lap, and the way back, I did something I'm ashamed of. Ralph began to glimpse her aura again, a dim gray ghost in which unformed blobs of dark blue swirled. Before you tell me, he said, listen to this and see if it sounds familiar. He related how Mrs. Perrine had approached while he was sitting on the porch, eating and waiting for Lois to get back. As he told her what he had done to the old lady, he dropped his eyes and felt his ears heating up again. Yes, she said, and when he was finished, it's the same thing I did, but I didn't mean to, Ralph. At least I don't think I meant to. I was sitting in the back seat with Mina, and she was starting to go on and on again about how different I looked, how young I looked, and I thought, I'm embarrassed to say it out loud, but I guess I better, I thought. I'll shut you up, you snoopy, envious old thing. Because it was envy, Ralph. I could see it in her aura. Like jagged spikes, the exact color of a cat's eyes. No wonder they called jealousy the green-eyed monster anyway. I pointed out the window and said, Oh, Nina, isn't that the dearest little house? And when she turned to look, I did what you did, Ralph, only I didn't curl up my hand, I just kind of puckered my lips, like this. She demonstrated, looking so kissable that Ralph felt moved. Almost compelled, in fact, to take advantage of the expression. And I breathed in a big cloud of her stuff. Well, what happened? Ralph asked, fascinated and afraid. Lois laughed ruefully. To me or her? Well, both of you. Nina jumped and slapped the back of her neck. There's a bug on me, she said. It bit me. No, please get it off. Of course, there was no bug on her. I was the bug. But I brushed at her neck just the same, then opened the window and told her it was gone. It flew away. She was lucky I didn't knock her brains out instead of just brushing her neck. That's how full of pep I was. I felt like I could have opened the car door and run all the way home. Ralph nodded. It was wonderful. Too wonderful. It's like the stories about drugs you see on TV. How they take you to heaven at first and then lock you in hell. What if we start doing this and can't stop? Yeah, Ralph said. And what if it hurts people? I keep thinking about vampires. Do you know what I keep thinking about? Lois's voice had dropped to a whisper. Those things you said at you talked about, those centurions? What if they're us, Ralph? What if they are us? He hugged her and kissed the top of her head. Hearing his first fear coming from her mouth made it less heavy on his own heart. and that made him think of what Lois had said about loneliness being the worst part of getting old. "I know," he said, "and what I did to Mrs. Perrine was totally spur of the moment. I don't remember thinking about it at all, just doing it. Was it that way with you?" "Yes, just like that," she said, her head against his shoulder. "We can't do it anymore," he said, "because it really might be addictive. Anything that feels that good just about has to be addictive, don't you think? We've got to try and build up some safeguards against doing it unconsciously, too. Because I think I have been. That could be why." A scream of brakes and sliding. Wailing tires cut him off. They stared at each other wide-eyed, as outside on the street that sound went on and on, grief seeming to search for a point of impact. There was a muffled thud from the street as the scream of the brakes and tires silenced. It was followed by a brief cry uttered either a woman or child. Ralph could not tell which. Someone else shouted, "What happened?" And then, "Oh, cripe!" There was a rattle of running footsteps on the pavement. "Stay on the couch," Ralph said, and hurried to the living room window. When he ran up the shade, Lois was standing right behind him, and Ralph felt a flash of approval. It was what Carolyn would have done under the similar circumstances. They looked out on a nighttime world that pushed with strange color and fabulous motion. Ralph knew it was Bill they were going to see. Knew it. Bill hit by a car and lying dead in the street, his Panama with a crescent bitten out of the brim lying near one outstretched hand. He slipped an arm around Lois, and she gripped his hand. But it wasn't McGovern. In the fan of headlights thrown by the Ford, which was slewed around in the middle of Harris Avenue, it was Rosalie. Her early morning shopping expeditions were at an end. He lay on her side in a spreading pool of blood, but her back was bunched and twisted in several places. As the driver of the car which had struck her knelt beside the old stray, the pitiless glare of the nearest street lamp illuminated his face. It was Joe Weiser, the Rite Aid druggist, his orange-yellow aura now swirling with confused eddies of red and blue. He stroked the old dog's side, and each time his hand slipped into the vile black aura which clung to Rosalie, it disappeared. Dreaming of terror washed through Ralph, dropping his temperature and shriveling his testicles until they felt like hard little peach pits. Suddenly it was July of 1992 again, Carolyn dying. The death watch ticking, and something weird had happened to Ed DePnew. One had freaked out, and Ralph had found himself trying to keep Helen's normally good-natured husband from springing at the man in the West Side Gardener's cap and attempting to rip out his throat. Then the cherry on the Charlotte Ruse, Carol would have said, Lawrence Marsteller had arrived. Old door, and what had he said? I wouldn't touch him anymore. I can't see your hands. I can't see your hands. Oh my God, Ralph whispered. Section 5. He was brought back to the here and now by the feeling of Lois swaying against him, as if she were on the edge of a faint. Lois, he said sharply, gripping her arm. Lois, are you okay? I think so, but Ralph, do you see? Yes, it's Rosalie. I don't mean her, I mean him. She pointed to the right. Doc number 3 was leaning against the trunk of Joe Weisner's Ford McGovern's Panama, tipped jauntily back on his bald skull. He looked toward Ralph and Lois, grinned insolently, and slowly raised his thumb to his nose and waggled his small fingers at them. You bastard! Ralph bellowed, and slammed his fist against the wall beside the window in frustration. Half a dozen people were running toward the scene of the accident, but there was nothing they could do. Rosalie would be dead before even the closest of them arrived at the place where she lay in the glare of the car's headlights. The black aura was solidifying, becoming something which looked almost like soot-darkened brick. It encased her like a form-fitting shroud, and Weiser's hand disappeared up to the wrist every time it slipped through that terrible garment. No, Now Doc number 3 raised his hand with the forefinger sticking up and cocked his head. A teacherly pantomime so good that it almost said, "Pay attention, please," right out loud. He tiptoed forward, unnecessary, as he couldn't be seen by the people out there, but good theater, and reached toward Joe Weiser's back pocket. He glanced around at Ralph and Lois, as if to ask them if they were still paying attention. Then he began to tiptoe forward again, reaching out with his left hand. "Stop him, Ralph," Lois moaned. "Oh, please stop him." Slowly, like a man who has been drugged, Ralph raised his hand and then chopped it down. A blue wedge of light flew from his fingertips, but it diffused as it passed through the window glass. A pastel fog spread out a little distance from Lois's house and then disappeared. The bald doctor shook his finger in an infuriating pantomime. "Oh, you naughty boy," it said. Doc number 3 reached out again and plucked something from Weiser's back pocket as he knelt in the street, mourning the dog. Ralph couldn't tell for sure what it was until the creature in the dirty smock swept McGovern's hat from his head and pretended to use it on his own non-existent hair. He had taken a black pocket comb, the kind you can buy in any convenience store for $1.29. Then he leaped into the air, clicking his heels like a malignant elf. Rosalie had raised her head at the bald doctor's approach. Now she lowered it back to the pavement and died. The aura surrounding her disappeared at once, not fading but simply winking out of existence like a soap bubble. Weiser got to his feet, turned to a man standing on the curb, and began to tell him what had happened, gesturing with his hands to indicate how the dog had run out in front of his car. Ralph found he could actually read a string of 6 words as they came off Weiser's lips. Seemed to come out of nowhere. And when Ralph shifted his gaze back down to the side of Weiser's car, he saw that that was the place to which the little bald doctor had returned. Chapter 16, Section 1. Ralph was able to get his rust bucket Oldsmobile started, but still it took him 20 minutes to get them across town to Dairy Home on the east side. Caroline had understood his increasing worries about his driving and tried to be sympathetic, but she'd had an impatient, hurry-up streak in her nature. And the years had not mellowed it much. On trips longer than half a mile or so, she was almost always unable to keep from lapsing into reproof. She would stew in silence for a while, thinking, then begin her critique. If she was particularly exasperated with her progress or lack of it, she might ask him if he thought an enema would help him get the lead out of his ass. She was a sweetheart, but there had always been an edge to her tongue. Following such remarks, Ralph would always offer, and always without rancor, to pull over and let her drive. Such offers Carol had always declined. Her belief was that, on short hops at least, it was the husband's job to drive and the wife's to offer constructive criticism. He kept waiting for Lois to comment on either his speed or his sloppy driving habits. He didn't think he would be able to remember his blinkers with any consistency these days, even if someone put a gun to his head. But she said nothing. Only sat where Caroline had sat, on 5,000 rides or more, holding her purse on her lap exactly as Caroline has always held hers. Wedges of light, store neon, traffic signals, street lights, ran like rainbows across Lois's cheeks and brows. Her dark eyes were distant and thoughtful. She had cried after Rosalie died, cried hard, and made Ralph pull down the shade again. Ralph almost hadn't done that. His first impulse had been to bolt out into the street before Joe Weiser could get away, to tell Joe he had to be very careful, to tell him that when he emptied his pants pockets tonight, he was going to be missing a cheap comb. No big deal. People are always losing combs, except this time it was a big deal. And next time it might be Rite Aid pharmacist Joe Weiser lying at the end of the skid. Listen to me, Joe, and listen closely. You have to be very careful because there's all sorts of news from Hyper-Reality Zone, and in your case, all of it comes inside black borders. There are problems with that, however. The biggest was that Joe Weiser, sympathetic as he had been on the day he had gotten Ralph an appointment with the acupuncturist, would think Ralph was crazy. Besides, how did one defend oneself against a creature one couldn't even see? So he pulled the shade, but before he did, he took one last hard look at the man who had told him he used to be Joe Wise, but was now older and wiser. The auras were still there, and he could see Weiser's balloon stream, a bright yellow rising intact from the top of his head, so he was still alright, for now at least. Ralph had led Lois into the kitchen and poured her another cup of coffee, black with lots of sugar. "He killed her, didn't he?" she asked as she raised the cup to her lips with both hands. "A little beast killed her." "Yes, but I don't think he did it tonight. I think he really did it this morning." "Why? Why?" "Because he could," Ralph said grimly. "I think it's the only reason he needs, just because he could." Lois had given him a long appraising look, and an expression of relief had slowly crept into her eyes. "You figured it out, haven't you?" "I should have known the minute I saw you this evening." "I would have known if I hadn't had so many things rolling around in what passes for my mind." "Figured it out? I'm miles from that, but I have had some ideas, Lois. Do you feel up to a trip to Derry home with me?" "I suppose so. Do you want to see Bill?" "I'm not sure exactly who I want to see. I might want to see Bill, but it might be Bill's friend Bob Polhurst. Maybe even Jimmy Vandermeer. Do you know him?" "Jimmy V? Of course I know him. I knew his wife even better, in fact. She used to play poker with us until she died. It was a heart attack and so sudden." She broke off suddenly, looking at Ralph with her dark Spanish eyes. "Jimmy's in the hospital? Oh God, it's the cancer, isn't it? The cancer came back?" "Yes, he's in the room right next to Bill's friend." Ralph told her about the conversation he'd had with Faye that morning and the note he'd found on the picnic table that afternoon. He pointed out the odd conjunction of rooms and residents. Polhurst, Jimmy V, Carolyn, and asked Lois if she thought it was just a coincidence. "No, I'm not sure it isn't." She glanced at the clock. "Come on, regular visiting hours over there finish at 9:30, I think. If we're going to get there before then, we better wiggle." Section 2. Now, as he turned onto Hospital Drive, "Forget your damn turn blinker again, sweetheart," Carolyn commented. He glanced at Lois sitting there with her hands clasped in her purse and her aura invisible for the time being, and asked if she was all right. She nodded. "Yes, not great, but okay. Don't worry about me." "But I do worry, Lois," Ralph thought. "A lot. And by the way, did you see Doc number 3 take the comb out of Joe Weiser's pocket?" That was a stupid question. Of course she'd seen. The bald midget had wanted her to see. He wanted both of them to see. The real question was how much significance she had attached to it. "How much do you really know, Lois? How many connections have you made? I have to wonder because you're not really that hard to see. I wonder, but I'm afraid to ask." There was a low brick building about a quarter of a mile farther down the feeder road. Woman care. A number of spotlights. New additions, he was quite sure, through fans of illumination across its lawn. And Ralph could see 2 men walking back and forth at the end of a grotesquely elongated shadow. Rent-a-cops, he supposed. Another new wrinkle, another flying in an evil wind. He turned left, this time remembering the blinker at least, and eased the olds carefully up the chute, which led into the multi-level hospital parking garage. At the top, an orange barrier arm blocked the way. "Please stop and take ticket," read the sign next to it. Ralph could recall a time when there used to be actual people in places like this, rendering them a little less eerie. Those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end. He thought as he unrolled his window and took a ticket from the automated dispenser. Ralph? He was concentrating on avoiding the back bumpers of the cars slant parked on both sides of the ascending aisles. He knew that the aisles were much too wide for the bumpers of those other cars to be an actual impediment to his progress. Actually, he knew it. But what his guts knew was something else. How Carolyn would bitch and moan about the way I'm driving, he thought with a certain distracted fondness. Do you know what we're doing here, or are we just winging it? Just another minute, let me get this damn thing parked. He passed several slots big enough for the olds on the first level, but none with enough buffer zone to make him feel comfortable. On the third level, he found 3 spaces side by side. Together, they were big enough to hold a Sherman tank comfortably, and babied the olds into the middle one. He killed the motor and turned to face Lois. Other engines idled above and below them. The locations impossible to pinpoint because of the echo. Orange light that was persistent, penetrating the tone globe now common to all such facilities as this, it seemed. And upon their skins like thin toxic paint. Lois looked back at him steadily. He could see traces of the tears she had cried for Rosalie in her puffy swollen lids, but the eyes themselves were calm and sure. He was struck by how much she had changed just since that morning, when he had found her sitting slump-shouldered on a park bench and weeping. Lois, he thought, if your son and daughter-in-law could see you tonight, I think they might run away screaming at the top of their lungs. Not because you look scary, but because the woman they came to bulldoze into moving to Riverview Estates is gone. Well, she asked with just a hint of a smile, are you going to talk to me or just look at me? Ralph, ordinarily a cautious sort of man, recklessly said the first thing to come into his head. What I'd like to do, I think, is eat you like ice cream. Her smile deepened enough to make dimples at the corners of her mouth. Maybe later we'll see how much of an appetite for ice cream you really have, Ralph. For now, just tell me why you brought me here. And don't tell me you don't know, because I think you do. Ralph closed his eyes, drew in a deep breath, and opened them again. I guess we're here to find the other 2 bald guys, the ones I saw coming out of May Loker's. If anyone can explain what's going on, it'll be them. What makes you think you'd find them here? I think they've got work to do. 2 men, Jimmy V and Bill's friend, dying side by side. I should have known what the bald doctors are, what they do, for the minute I saw the ambulance guys bring Mrs. Loker out strapped to a stretcher and with a sheet over her face. I would have known if I hadn't been so damn tired. The scissors should have been enough. Instead, it took me until this afternoon, and I only got it then because of something Mr. Polhurst's niece said. What was that? That death was stupid. That if an obstetrician took as much time cutting the umbilical cord, he'd been sued for malpractice. It made me think of a myth I read when I was in grade school and couldn't get enough of gods and goddesses and Trojan horses. The story was about 3 sisters. The Greek sisters maybe, or maybe it was the weird sisters. Shit, don't ask me. Can't even remember to use a damn turn blinkers half the time. Anyway, these sisters were responsible for the course of all human life. All of them spun the thread. One of them decided how long it would be. Is any of this ringing a bell, Lois? Of course it is, she nearly shouted. The balloon strings. Ralph nodded. Yes, the balloon strings. I don't remember the names of the first 2 sisters, but I never forgot the name of the last one. Atropos. And according to the story, her job is to cut the thread. The first one spins and the second one measures. You could argue with her, you could beg, but it never made any difference. When she decided it was time to cut, she cut. Lois was nodding. Yes, I remember that story. I don't know if I read it or someone told me about it when I was a kid. You believe it's actually true, Ralph, don't you? Only it turns out to be the Bold brothers instead of the weird sisters. Yes and no. As I remember the story, sisters were all on the same side, a team. And that's the feeling I got about the two men who came out of Mrs. Loker's house. That they were longtime partners with immense respect for each other. But the other guy, the one we saw again tonight, isn't like them. I think Doc Number 3 is a rogue. Lois shivered, a theatrical gesture that became real at the last moment. I saw him do something. Ralph turned and looked at her. The tendons on his neck creaked restily. She had a pretty good idea what she was going to say. He picked the pocket of the man who hit Rosalie, she said. While he was kneeling beside her in the street, the bald man picked his pocket. Except all he took was a comb, and the hat that bald man was wearing. I'm pretty sure I recognize it. Ralph went on looking at her, fervently hoping that Lois's memory of Doc Number 3 apparel did not extend any further. It was Bill's, wasn't it? Bill's Panama. Ralph nodded. Sure it was. Lois closed her eyes. Oh, Lord. What do you say, Lois? Are you still game? Yes. She opened her door and swung her legs out, but let's get going right away before I lose my nerve. Tell me about it, Ralph said. Section 3. As they approached the main doors of Derry home, Ralph leaned toward Lois's ear and murmured, Is it happening to you? Yes. Her eyes were very wide. God, yes, it's strong this time, isn't it? As they broke the electric eye beam and the doors to the hospital lobby swung open before them, the surface of the world suddenly peeled back, disclosing another world. One that simmered with unseen colors and shifted with unseen shapes. Overhead, on the wall-to-wall mural depicting Derry, as it had been during its halcyon lumbering days at the turn of the century, dark brown arrow shapes chased each other, growing closer and closer until they touched. When that happened, they flashed a momentary dark green and changed direction. A bright silver funnel that looked like either a waterspout or a toy cyclone was descending the curved staircase, which led to the second-floor meeting rooms, cafeteria, and auditorium. Its wide top end nodded back and forth as it moved from step to step, and to Ralph it felt distinctly friendly, like an anthropomorphic character in a Disney cartoon. As Ralph watched, two men with briefcases hurried up the stairs, and one of them passed directly through the silver funnel. He never paused in what he was saying to his companion, but when he emerged on the other side, Ralph saw he was absently using his free hand to smooth back his hair, although not a strand was out of place. The funnel reached the bottom of the stairs, raced around the center of the lobby in its height exuberant figure 8, and then popped out of existence, leaving only a faint rosy mist behind. This quickly dissipated. Lois dug her elbow into Ralph's side, started to point toward an area beyond the central information booth, realized there were people instead. Earlier, Ralph had seen a shape in the sky which had looked like a prehistoric bird. Now he saw something which looked like a long translucent snake. It was pressing its way across the ceiling above a sign which read, "Please wait here for blood testing." "Is it alive?" Lois whispered with some alarm. Ralph looked more closely and realized that the thing had no head, no discernible tail either. It was all body. He supposed it was alive. He had an idea all the auras were alive in some fashion, but he didn't think it was really a snake, and he doubted that it was dangerous, at least to the likes of them. "Don't Don't sweat the small stuff, sweetheart, he whispered back to her as they joined the short line Central Information. And as he said it, the snake thing seemed to melt into the ceiling and disappear. Ralph didn't know how important such things as the bird and the cyclone were in the secret world's scheme of things, but he was positive that people were still the main show. The lobby of Derry Home Hospital was like a gorgeous 4th of July fireworks display, a display in which the parts of the Roman candles and Chinese fountains were being played by human beings. Lois hooked her finger into his collar to make him bend his head toward her. "You'll have to do the talking, Ralph," she said in a strengthless, amazed little voice. "I'm having all I can do not to wee in my pants." "Hey, brother." The man ahead of them left the booth and Ralph stepped forward. As he did, a clear, sweetly nostalgic memory of Jimmy V surfaced in his mind. They'd been on the road someplace in Rhode Island, Kingston maybe, and had decided on the spur of the moment that they wanted to attend the tent revival going on in a nearby hayfield. They'd both been drunk as fleas in a gin bottle, of course. A pair of well-scrubbed young ladies had been standing outside the turned-back flaps of the tent, handing out tracts, and, as he and Jimmy neared them, they began to admonish each other in aromatic whispers to act sober, damn it, to just act sober. Had they gotten in that day, or... "Hey, you," the woman in the Central Information booth asked, her tone saying she was doing Ralph a real favor just by speaking to him. He looked through the glass at her and saw a woman buried inside a troubled orange aura that looked like a burning bramble bush. Here's a lady who loves the fine print and stands on all ceremony. She can, he thought, and on the heels of that, Ralph remembered that the two young women flanking the entrance to the tent had gotten one whiff of him and Jimmy V, and turned them politely but firmly away. They had ended up spending the evening in a Central Falls juke joint, as he recalled, and had probably been lucky not to get rolled when they staggered out after last call. "Sir?" the woman in the glass booth asked impatiently. "Can I help you?" Ralph came back to the present with a thud he could almost feel. "Yes, ma'am. My wife and I would like to visit Jimmy Vandermeer on the 3rd floor if... That's ICU, she snapped. "Can't go to ICU without a special pass." Orange hooks began to poke their way out of the glow around her head, and her aura began to look like barbed wire strung across some ghostly no-man's land. "I know," Ralph said, more humbly than ever, "but my friend, Lafayette Chapin, he said..." "Gosh," the woman in the booth interrupted. "It's wonderful the way everyone's got a friend. Really wonderful." She rolled a satiric eye toward the ceiling. Faye said Jimmy could have visitors, though. You see, he has cancer and he's not expected to live much. Well, I'll check the files, the woman in the booth said, with her grudging air of one who knows she is being sent on a fool's errand. "The computer is very slow tonight, so it's going to take a while. Give me your name, then you and your wife can go sit over there. I'll page you as soon as..." Ralph decided that he had eaten enough humble pie in front of the bureaucratic guard dog. It wasn't as if he wanted an exit visa from Albania. After all, just a goddamn ICU pass would do. There was a slot in the base of the glass booth. Ralph reached through it and grasped a woman's wrist before she could pull it away. There was a sensation, painless but very clear, of those orange hooks passing directly through his flesh without finding anything to catch on. Ralph squeezed gently and felt a small burst of force, something that would have been no bigger than a pellet if it had been seen, passed from him to the woman. Suddenly the officious orange aura around her left arm and side turned a faded turquoise of Ralph's aura. She gasped and jerked forward in her chair, as if someone had just dumped a paper cup filled with ice cubes down the back of her uniform. Never mind the computer. Just give me a couple of passes, please, right away. Yes, sir, she said at once. And Ralph looked over her so she could reach beneath her desk. The turquoise glow around her arm was turning orange again, the change in color creeping down from her shoulder toward her wrist. But I could have turned her all blue, Ralph thought, taken her over, run her around the room like a wind-up toy. He suddenly remembered Ed quoting Matthew's Gospel. Ben Herod, when he saw that he was mocked, was exceeding wroth, and a mixture of fright and shame filled him. Thoughts of vampirism recurred as well in a snatch from a famous old Pogo comic strip. We have met the enemy, and he is us. Yes, he could probably do almost anything he wanted with this orange Cloliop grub. His batteries were fully charged. The only problem was that the juice in those batteries, and in Lois's as well, was stolen goods. When the information lady's hand emerged from beneath the desk, it was holding 2 laminated pink badges marked Intensive Care Visitor. Here you are, sir, she said in a courteous voice, utterly unlike the tone in which she had first addressed him. Enjoy your visit, and thank you for waiting. Thank you, Ralph said. He took the badges and grasped Lois's hand. Come on, dear, we ought to. Ralph, what did you do to her? Nothing, I guess. Think she's all right. Get upstairs and make her visits before it gets too late. Lois glanced back at the woman in the information booth. She was dealing with her next customer, but slowly, as if she'd just been granted some moderately amazing revelation, and had to think it over. The blue glow was now visible only to the very tips of her fingers, and as Lois watched, that disappeared as well. Lois looked up at Ralph and smiled. Yes, she is all right. So stop beating up on yourself. Was that what I was doing? I think so, yes. We're talking that way again, Ralph. I know. Ralph? Yes. This is all pretty wonderful, isn't it? Yes. Ralph tried to hide the rest of what he was thinking from her. That when the price for something which felt this wonderful came due, they were apt to discover it was very high. We're going to continue on with section 4, but before we do, we're going to go to our first music break. And on this break, we have wonderful, the lovely, the talented Miss Mia Savage with her band, Antidote for Savages. And she's going to be singing Your Skeleton, Our New Reality, Let Me Be Your Home, and Lemurian Crypto. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight. You're mine. In a sea of broken hearts, won't let you fall apart. We'll make a brand new start when you're coming back. I wanna take a ride. I wanna show him love. I wanna knock him down. Come with me to our new reality. You don't need all the shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight. You're mine. Come with me to our new reality. You don't need all the shit that he brings anymore. You're mine. You're mine. Tonight.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me tonight on We Are Paradox Media's Late Night in the Rockies. I'm your host, TessaTNT, and we are going to continue on with our book Insomnia by Mr. Stephen King. Section 4. Stop staring at that baby, Ralph. You're making its mother nervous. Ralph glanced at the woman in whose arms the baby slept and saw that Lois was right, but it was hard not to look. The baby, no more than 3 months old, lay within a capsule of violently shifting yellow-gray aura. This powerful but disquieting thunderlight circled the tiny body with the idiot speed of the atmosphere surrounding a gas giant. Jupiter, say, or Saturn? Jesus, Lois, that's brain damage, isn't it? Yes, the woman says. There was a car accident. Says, have you been talking to her? No, I don't understand. Join the club. The oversized hospital elevator labored slowly upward inside the lane. The halt, the guilty few in good health, didn't speak but either turned their eyes up to the floor indicator over the doors or down to inspect their own shoes. The only exception to this was the woman with the thunderstruck baby. She was watching Ralph with distrust and alarm, as if she expected him to leap forward at any moment and try to rip her infant from her arms. It's not just that I was looking, Ralph thought. At least I don't think so. She felt me thinking about her baby. She felt me, sensed me, heard me. Some damn thing anyways. I just realized I did not pull up my pick. Insomnia. Don't you love it? Images. This one guy looks pretty freaky. Eyes wide open. I have insomnia, but I don't sleep like that. This one will work. Since he is starting to look younger, we'll use this one. Oh, Ralph. Alright, let me go back over here and present it to you. Alright. This will be a good one, I think. Alrighty then. It's not just that I was looking, Ralph thought. At least I don't think so. She felt me thinking about her baby. Felt me, sensed me, heard me. So damn thing anyway. The elevator stopped on the second floor and the doors wheezed open. The woman with the baby turned to Ralph. The infant shifted slightly as she did, and Ralph got a look at the crown of its head. There was a deep crease in the tiny skull. A red scar ran the length of it. To Ralph it looked like a rill of tainted water standing at the bottom of a ditch. The ugly and confused yellow-gray aura which surrounded the baby was emerging from this scar, like steam from a crack in the earth. The baby's balloon string was the same color as its aura, and it was unlike any other balloon string Ralph had seen so far. Not unhealthy in appearance, but short, ugly, and no more than a stub. Didn't your mother ever teach you any manners? The baby's mother asked Ralph. And what cut him wasn't so much the admonition as the way she made it. He had scared her badly. Madam, I assure you. Yeah, go on and assure my fins, she said, and stepped out of the car. The elevator doors started to slide closed. Ralph glanced at Lois, and the two of them exchanged a moment of brief but total understanding. Lois shook her finger at the doors as if scolding them, and a gray, mesh-like substance fanned out from its tip. The doors struck this and then slid back into their slots, as they were programmed to do upon encountering any barrier to their progress. Madam! The woman stopped and turned around, clearly confused. She shot suspicious glances at her, trying to identify who had spoken. Her aura was dark, glittery yellow with faint tints of orange. spoken out from its inner edges. Ralph fixed her eyes with his. I'm sorry if I offended you. This is all very new to my friend and me. We're like children at a formal dinner. I apologize. And then there's just a blank dash, dash, dash. He didn't know just what she was trying to communicate. It was like watching someone talk inside a sunproof booth. But he sensed relief and deep unease. Sort of unease people feel when they think that they have been observed doing something that they shouldn't. Her doubtful eyes remained on his face a moment or two longer, then she turned and began to walk rapidly down the corridor in the direction of a sign reading Neurological Survey. The gray mesh Lois had cast out the door was thinning, and when the doors tried to close again, they cut neatly through it. The car continued its slow upward journey. Ralph, I think I know what happened to that baby. She reached towards his face with her right hand and slipped it between his nose and mouth with her palm down. She pressed the pad of her thumb lightly against one of his cheekbones, and the pad of her index finger lightly against the other. It was done so quickly and confidently that no one else in the elevator noticed. If one of the three other riders had noticed, he or she would have seen something that looked like a neatness-minded wife smoothing away a blot of skin lotion or a dollop of leftover shaving cream. Ralph felt as if someone had pulled a high-voltage switch inside his brain, one that turned on whole banks of blazing stadium lights. In their raw momentary glow, he saw a terrible image, hands clad in a violent brownish-purple aura reaching into a crib and snatching up the baby that they had just seen. He was shaken back and forth, head snapping and rolling on the thin stalk of a neck like the head of a Raggedy Ann doll, and thrown. The lights in his head went black thin, and Ralph let out a harsh, shuddery sigh of relief. He thought of the pro-life protesters he'd seen on the evening news just last night. Men and women waving signs with Susan Day's picture and wanted for murder on them. Men and women in Grim Reaper robes. Men and women carrying a banner which read, "Life, what a beautiful choice." He wondered if the thunderstruck baby might have a differing opinion on the last one. He met Lois's amazed, agonized eyes with his own and groped out to take her hands. Father did it right, threw the kid against the wall. Yes, and the baby wouldn't stop crying. And she knows, but she hasn't told anyone. No, but she might, Ralph. She's thinking about it. She might also wait until he does it again, and next time he might finish the job. A terrible thought occurred to Ralph then. It shot across his mind like a meteor scratching momentary fire across the midnight summer sky. It might be better if he did finish the job. The thunderstruck baby's balloon string had only been a stump, but it had been a healthy stump. The child might live for years not knowing who he was or where he was, let alone why he was, watching people come and go like trees in the mist. Lois was standing with her shoulders slumped, looking at the floor of the elevator car and radiating a sadness that squeezed Ralph's heart. He reached out, put a finger under her chin, and watched a delicate blue rose spin itself out of the place where his aura touched hers. He tilted her head up and was not surprised to see tears in her eyes. "Do you still think it's all pretty wonderful, Lois?" he asked softly, and to this he received no answer, either with his ears or in his mind. Is this thing on? I can't tell. Hold on, let me look. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, it's working. Cool. Just making sure. Jeez, oh Pete. Might keep that one. Section 5. They were the only two to get out on the third floor, where the silence was as thick as the dust under library shelves. A pair of nurses stood halfway up the hall, clipboards held to white-clad bosoms, talking in low whispers. Anyone else standing by the elevators might have looked at them and surmised a conversation dealing with life, death, and heroic measures. Ralph and Lois, however, took one look at their overlapping auras and knew that the subject currently under discussion was where to go for a drink when their shift ended. Ralph saw this, and at the same time he didn't. the way a deeply preoccupied man sees and obeys traffic signals without really seeing them. Most of his mind was occupied with a deadly sense of déjà vu, which had washed over him the moment he and Lois stepped out of the elevator and entered this world where the faint squeak of the nurse's shoes on the linoleum sounded almost exactly like the faint beep of a life support equipment. Even-numbered rooms on the left, odd-numbered rooms on your right, he thought, and 317 where Carolyn died is up by the nurse's station. It was 317, all right, I remember. Now that I'm here, I remember everything. How someone was always sticking her chart in the little pocket on the back of the door upside down. How the light from the window fell across the bed in a kind of crooked rectangle on sunny days. How you could sit in the visitor's chair and look out at the desk nurse, whose job it was to monitor vital signs, incoming telephone calls, and outgoing pizza orders. The same, all the same. It was early March again, the gloomy end of leaden, overcast day, sleep beginning to spick-spack off the one window of room 317. And he had been sitting in the visitor's chair with an unopened copy of Schirer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich in his lap since early morning, sitting there not wanting to get up, even long enough to use the bathroom because the death watch had almost run down by then. Each tick was a lurch, and the gap between each tick and the next was a lifetime. His longtime companion had a train to catch, and he wanted to be on the platform to see her off. There would only be one chance to do it right. It was very easy to hear the sleet as it picked up speed and velocity because the life support equipment had been turned off. Ralph had given up during the last week of February. It had taken Carolyn, who had never given up in her life, a little longer to get the message. And what exactly was that message? Why that, in a hard-fought 10-round match pitting Carolyn Roberts against cancer, the winner was cancer, that all-time heavyweight champion, by a TKO. He had sat in the visitor's chair watching and waiting as her respiration grew more and more pronounced. The long sighing exhale, the flat, moveless chest, the growing certainty that the last breath had indeed been the last breath, that the watch had run down. The train arrived in the station to take on its single passenger, and then another huge, unconscious gasp would come as she tore the next lungful out of the unfriendly air, no longer breathing in any normal sense, but only lunging reflectively along from one gasp to the next like a drunk lurching down a long, dark corridor in a cheap hotel. Spickle, spickle, speckle, speckle. The sleet had gone on wrapping invisible fingernails against the window as the Dirty March day drew down to Dirty March dark, and Carolyn went on fighting the last half of her last round. By then she had been running completely on autopilot, of course. The brain which had once existed within the finely made skull was gone. It had been replaced by a mutant, a stupid gray-black delinquent that could not think or feel but only eat and eat and eat until it had gorged itself to death. Spickle, spickle, speckle, speckle. And he had seen that the T-shaped breathing apparatus in her nose had come askew. He waited for her to tear one of her awful, labored breaths out of the air, and then, as she exhaled, he had leaned forward and replaced the small plastic nosepiece. He'd gotten a little mucus on his fingers, he remembered, and had wiped it off on a tissue from the box on the bedside table. He sat back, waiting for the next breath, wanting to make sure the nosepiece didn't come askew again. But there wasn't any next breath, and he realized that the ticking sound he had heard... Sorry, my pages are stuck together. Coming from everywhere since the previous summer seemed to have stopped. He remembered waiting as the minutes passed, 1, then 3, then 6, unable to believe that all the good years and good times, not to mention the few bad ones, had ended in this flat and toneless fashion. Her radio, tuned to the local easy listening station, was playing softly in the corner, and he listened to Simon and Garfunkel sing Scarborough Fair. They sang it all the way to the end. Wayne Newton came on next and began to sing Donca's Shame. Who sang it all the way to the end? The weather report came next, but before the disc jockey could finish telling about how the weather was going to be on Ralph Roberts' first full day as a widower, all that stuff about clearing and colder and wind shifting around to the northeast, Ralph finally got it through his head. The watch had stopped ticking. The train had come. The boxing match was over. All the metaphors had fallen down, leaving only the woman in the room, silent at last. Ralph began to cry. Still crying, he had blundered over into the corner and turned off the radio. He remembered the summer they had taken a finger paint class, and the night they had ended up finger painting each other's naked bodies. This memory made him cry harder. He went to the window and leaned his head against the cold glass and cried. In that first terrible minute of understanding, he had wanted only one thing, to be dead himself. The nurse heard him crying and came in. She tried to take Carolyn's pulse. Ralph told her to stop being a goddamn fool. She came over to Ralph, and for a moment he thought she was going to try to take his pulse instead. She had put her arms around him. Ralph, are you still all right? He looked around at Lois, started to say he was fine, and then remembered there was a precious little he could hide from while they were in the state. Feeling sad, too many memories in here, not good ones. I understand, but look down, Ralph. Look on the floor. He did, and his eyes widened. The floor was covered with an overlay of multicolored tracks, some fresh, most fading to invisibility. 2 sets stood out clearly from the rest, as brilliant as diamonds, and a litter of paste imitations. They were deep green gold in which a few tiny reddish flecks still swam. Do they belong to the ones we're looking for, Ralph? Yes, the docks are here. Ralph took Lois's hand. It felt very cold, and began to lead her slowly up the hall. Chapter 17, Section 1. They hadn't gone far when something very strange and rather frightening happened. For a moment, the world bled white in front of them. The doors to the rooms ranged along the hall, barely visible in this bright white haze, expanded to the size of warehouse loading bays. The corridor itself seemed to simultaneously elongate and grow taller. Ralph felt the bottom go out of his stomach, the way it often had back when he was a teenager, and a frequent customer on the Dust Devil roller coaster at Old Orchard Beach. He heard Lois moan, and she squeezed his hand with panicky tightness. The without lasted only a second, and when the colors swarmed back into the world, they were brighter and crisper than they had been a moment before. Normal perspective returned, but objects looked thicker somehow. The auras were still there, but they appeared both thinner and paler, pastel coronas instead of spray-painted primary colors. At the same time, Ralph realized he could see every crack and pore in the sheet-rocked wall to his left. And then he realized he could see the pipes, wires, insulation behind the walls if he wanted to. All he had to do was look. Oh my God, he thought. Is this really happening? Can this really be happening? Sounds were everywhere. Hushed bells, a toilet being flushed, muted laughter. Sounds a person normally took for granted as part of everyday life, but not now. Not here. Like the visible reality of things, the sounds seemed to have an extraordinarily sensuous texture, like thin overlapping scallops of silk and steel. Nor were all the sounds ordinary. There were a great many exotic ones weaving their way through the mix. He heard a fly buzzing deep in a heating duct, the fine-grained sandpaper sound of a nurse adjusting her pantyhose in the staff bathroom. Boom! Beating hearts, circulating blood, the soft tidal flow of respiration. Each sound was perfect on its own, fitted into the others. They made a beautiful and complicated auditory ballet. A hidden swan lake of gurgling stomachs, humming power outlets, hurricane hairdryers, whispering wheels on hospital gurneys. Ralph could hear a TV at the end hall beyond the nurse's station. It was coming from room 340, where Mr. Thomas Wren, a kidney patient, was watching Kirk Douglas and Lana Turner in The Bad and the Beautiful. "If you team up with me, baby, we'll turn this town on its ear," Kirk was saying. And Ralph knew from the aura which surrounded the words that Mr. Douglas had been suffering a toothache on the day that particular scene was filmed. Nor was that all. He knew he could go higher, deeper, wider if he wanted. Ralph most definitely did not want. This was the Forest of Arden, and a man could get lost in its thickets, or eaten by tigers. Jesus, it's another level. It must be Lois. A whole other level. I know. Are you okay with this? I think I am, Ralph. Are you? I guess so for now, but if the bottom drops out again, I don't know. Come on. But before they could begin following the green gold tracks again, Bill McGovern and a man Ralph didn't know came out of the room 313. They were deep in conversation. Lois turned a horror-struck face toward Ralph. "Oh no, oh God, no. Do you see, Ralph? Do you see?" Ralph gripped her hand more tightly. He saw all right. McGovern's friend was surrounded by a plum-colored aura. It didn't look especially healthy, but Ralph didn't think the man was seriously ill either. It was just a lot of chronic stuff like rheumatism and kidney gravel. A balloon string of the same mottled purple shade rose from the top of the man's aura, wavering hesitantly back and forth like a diver's air hose in a mild current. McGovern's aura, however, was totally black. The stump of what had once been a balloon string jutted stiffly up from it. The thunderstruck baby's balloon string had been short but healthy. What they were looking at now was the decaying remnant of a crude amputation. Ralph had a momentary image so strong it was almost a hallucination, with McGovern's eyes first bulging and then popping out of their sockets, knocked loose by a flood of black bugs. He had to close his eyes for a moment to keep from screaming, and when he opened them again, Lois was no longer at his side. Where did she go? Section 2. McGovern and his friend were walking in the direction of the nurse's station, probably bound for the water fountain. Lois was in hot pursuit, trotting up the corridor, bosom heaving. Her aura flashed with twizzling pinkish sparks that looked like neon-flavored asterisks. Ralph bolted after her. He didn't know what would happen if she caught McGovern's attention and didn't really want to find out. He thought he was probably going to, however. Lois, don't do that. She ignored him. Bill, stop. You have to listen to me. Something's wrong with you. McGovern paid no attention to her. He was talking about Bob Polhurst's manuscript. Later that summer. "Best damn book on the Civil War I ever read," he told the man inside the plum-colored aura. But when I suggested that he publish, he told me that was out of the question. Can you believe it? A possible Pulitzer Prize winner, but Lois came back. "Don't go near him." Bill, but Lois reached McGovern just before Ralph was able to reach her. She put out her hand to grab his shoulder. Ralph saw her fingers plunge into the murk which surrounded him, and then slide into him. Her aura changed at once from a gray-blue shot with those pinkish sparks to a red as bright as the side of a fire engine. Jagged flocks of black shot through it like clouds of tiny swarming insects. Lois screamed and pulled her hand back. The expression on her face was a mixture of terror and loathing. She held her hand up in front of her eyes and screamed again, although Ralph could see nothing on it. Narrow black stripes were now whirring giddily around the outer edges of her aura. To Ralph, they looked like planetary orbits marked on a map of the solar system. She turned to flee. Ralph grabbed her by the upper arms, and she beat at him blindly. McGovern and his friend, meanwhile, continued their placid amble up the hall to the drinking fountain, completely unaware of the shrieking, struggling woman not 10 feet behind them. "When I asked Bob why he wouldn't publish the book," McGovern was continuing, "he said that I, of all people, should understand his reasons. I told him." Lois drowned him out, shrieking like a fireball. "Quit it, Lois. Quit it right now. Whatever happened to you is over now. It's over, and you're all right." But Lois continued to struggle, joining those inarticulate screams into his head, trying to tell him how awful it had been, how he'd been rotting, that there were things inside him eating him alive, and that was bad enough. But it wasn't the worst. Those things were aware, she said. They were bad, and they had known she was there. Lois, you are with me, and it's all of her flying fists clipped the side of his jaw, and Ralph saw stars. He understood that they had passed to a plane of reality where physical contact with others was impossible. Hadn't he seen Lois's hand pass directly into McGovern, like the hand of a ghost? But they were obviously still real enough to each other. He had the bruised jaw to prove it. He slipped his arms around her and hugged her against him, imprisoning her fists between her breast and his chest. Her cries continued to rant and blast in his head, however. He locked his hands together between her shoulder blades and squeezed. He felt the power leap out of him again, as it had that morning, only this time it felt entirely different. Blue light spilled through Lois's turbulent red-black aura, soothing it. Her struggle slowed and then ceased. He felt her draw a shuddering breath. Above and around her, the blue glow was expanding and fading. The black bands disappeared from her aura, one after the other, from the bottom up, and then that alarming shade of infected red also began to fade. She put her head against his arm. I'm sorry, Ralph. I went nuclear again, didn't I? I suppose so, but never mind. You're okay now. That's the important thing. If you know how horrible that was, touching him that way. You put it across very well, Lois. She glanced down the corridor where McGovern's friend was now getting a drink. McGovern lounged against the wall next to him, talking about how the exalted and revered Bob Polhurst had always done the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle in ink. He used to tell me that wasn't pride but optimism, McGovern said, and the death bag swirled sluggishly around him as he spoke, flowing in and out of his mouth and between the fingers of his gesturing, eloquent hand. We can't help him, can we, Ralph? There's not a thing in the world we can do. Ralph gave her a brief, strong hug. Her aura, he saw, had entirely returned to normal. McGovern and his friend were walking back down the corridor toward them, acting on impulse. Ralph disengaged himself from Lois and stepped directly in front of Mr. Plum, who was listening to McGovern hold forth on the tragedy of old age and nodding in the right places. Ralph, don't do that. It's okay, don't worry. But all at once, he wasn't so sure it was okay. He might have stepped back, given another second, before he could. However, Mr. Plum glanced unseeingly into his face and walked right through him. The sensation that swept through Ralph's body at this passage was perfectly familiar. It was the pins and needles feeling one gets when a sleeping limb starts to wake up. For one moment, his aura and Mr. Plum's mingled, and Ralph knew something about the man that there was to know, including the dreams he'd had in his mother's womb. Mr. Plum stopped short. Something wrong? McGovern asked. I guess not, but did you hear a bang someplace, like a firecracker or a car backfire? Can't say I did, but my hearing isn't what it used to be, McGovern chuckled. If something did blow up, I certainly hope it wasn't in one of the radiation labs. I don't hear anything now, probably just my imagination. They turned into Bob Polhurst's room. Ralph thought, this is Perrine, said it sounded like a gunshot. Lois's friend thought there was a bug on her, maybe biting her. Just a difference in touch, maybe, the way different piano players have different touches. Either way, they feel it when we mess with them. They may not know what it is, but they sure do feel it. Lois took his hand and led him to the door, the room of 313. They stood in the hall looking in as McGovern seated himself in a plastic contoured chair at the foot of the bed. There were at least 8 people crammed into the room, and Ralph couldn't see Bob Polhurst clearly, but he could see one thing. Although he was deep within his own death bag, Polhurst's blue string was still intact. It was as filthy as a rusty exhaust pipe, peeling in some places and cracked in others, but it was still intact. He turned to Lois. These people may have longer to wait than they think. Lois nodded, then pointed down at the greeny gold footprints, the white man tracks. They bypassed 313, Ralph saw, but turned in at the next door, 315, Jimmy V's room. She and Lois walked up together and stood looking in. Jimmy V had 3 visitors, and the one sitting beside the bed thought he was all alone. That one was Faye Chapin, idly looking through the double stack of get well cards on Jimmy's bedside table. The other 2 were the little bold doctors Ralph had seen for the first time on Mayloker's stoop. They stood at the foot of Jimmy V's bed, solemn in their clean white tunics, and now that he stood close to them, Ralph could see that there were worlds of character in those unlined, almost identical faces. It just wasn't the sort of thing one could see through a pair of binoculars. Or maybe not until you slid up the ladder of perception a little way. Most of it was in the eyes, which were dark, pupilless, and flecked with gold glints. Those eyes shone with intelligence and lively awareness. Their auras gleamed and flashed around them like the robes of emperors, or perhaps of centurions on a visit of state. They looked over at Ralph and Lois, who stood holding hands in the doorway like children who have lost their way in a fairy tale wood, and smiled at them. "Hello, woman." That was Doc Number 1. He was holding the scissors in his right hand. The blades were very long, and the points looked very sharp. Doc Number 2 took a step toward them and made a funny little half bow. "Hello, man. We've been waiting for you." Section 3. Ralph felt Lois's hand tighten on his own, then loosen as she decided that they were in no immediate danger. She took a small step forward, looking for Doc Number 1, to Doc Number 2, and then back to Number 1 again. "Who are you?" Doc Number 1 crossed his arms over his small chest. The long blades of his scissors lay the entire length of his white-clad left forearm. "We don't have names, not the way short-timers do, but you may call us after the fates in the story this man has already told you. But these names originally belonged to women. It means little to us, since we are creatures with no sexual dimension. I will be Clotho, although I spin no thread, and my colleague and old friend will be Lichesis, although he shakes no rods and has never thrown the coins. Both of you, please." They came in and stood warily between the visitor's chair and the bed. Ralph didn't think the docs meant them any harm, for now at least, but he still didn't want to get too close. Their auras, so bright and fabulous compared to those of ordinary people, intimidated him, and he could see from Lois's wide eyes and half-open mouth that she felt the same. She sensed him looking at her, turned toward him, and tried to smile. "My Lois," Ralph thought. He put an arm around her shoulders and hugged her briefly. "Lichesis. We've given you our names you may use at any rate. Won't you give us yours?" "Lois. You mean you don't already know? Pardon me, but I find that hard to believe." "Lichesis. We could know but choose not to. We like to observe the rules of common short-time politeness wherever we can. We find them lovely, for they are passed on by your kin from large hand to small and create the illusion of long lives." "I don't understand." Ralph didn't either, and wasn't sure he wanted to. He found something faintly patronizing in the tone of the one who called himself Lichesis, something that reminded him of McGovern when he was in a mood to lecture or pontificate. "Lichesis, it doesn't matter. We felt sure you would come. We know that you were watching us on Monday morning, man. What the home of?" At this point there was a queer overlapping in Lichesis' speech. He seemed to say 2 things at exactly the same time, the terms rolling together like a snake with its own tail in its mouth. Mayloker, the finished woman. Lois took a hesitant step forward. "My name is Lois Chase. My friend is Ralph Roberts, and now that we've all been properly introduced, maybe you 2 fellows will tell us what's going on around here?" Lichesis. "There's another to be named. Clotho. Ralph Roberts has already named him." Lois looked at Ralph, who was nodding his head. "They're talking about Doc Number 3, right, guys?" Clotho and Lichesis nodded. They were wearing identical, approving smiles. Ralph supposed that he should be flattered, but he wasn't. Instead, he was afraid and very angry. They had been neatly manipulated, every step down the line. This was no chance meeting. It had been a setup from the word go. Clotho and Lachesis just got a couple of little bald doctors with time on their hands, standing around in Jimmy B's room waiting for the short timers to arrive. Ho-hum. Ralph glanced over at Faye and saw he had taken a book called 50 Classic Chess Problems out of his back pocket. He was reading and picking his nose in a ruminative fashion as he did so. After a few preliminary explorations, Faye dove deep and hooked a big one. He examined it, then parked it on the underside of the bedside table. Gross. Ralph looked away embarrassed, and the saying of his grandmother's popped into his head. Peek not through a keyhole, lest ye be vexed. He had lived to be 70 without fully understanding that. At last, he thought he did. Meanwhile, another question had occurred to him. Why doesn't Faye see us? Why didn't Bill and his friends see us, for that matter? And how could that man walk right through me, or did I just imagine that? Clotho smiled. You didn't imagine it. Try to think of life as a kind of building, Ralph. What you would call a skyscraper. That wasn't quite the Clotho was thinking of, Ralph discovered. For one flickering moment he seemed to catch an image from the mind of the other, one he found both exciting and disturbing. An enormous tower constructed of dark and sooty stone standing in a field of red roses. Split windows twisted up its side in a brooding spiral. Then it was gone. You and Lois and all the other short-time creatures live on the first 2 floors of this structure. Of course there are elevators. No, Ralph thought. Not in the tower I saw in your mind, my little friend. In that building, if such a building actually exists, there are no elevators, only a narrow staircase, festooned with cobwebs and doorways leading to God knows what. Lachesis was looking at him with a strange, almost suspicious curiosity, and Ralph decided he didn't much care for that look. He turned back to Clotho and motioned for him to go on. Clotho, as I was saying, there are elevators, but short-timers are not allowed to use them under ordinary circumstances. You are not. Ready? Prepared. The last explanation was clearly the best, but it danced away from Ralph just before he could grasp it. He looked at Lois, he shook her head, and then back to Clotho and Lachesis again. He was beginning to feel angrier than ever. All the long, endless nights sitting in the wing chair and waiting for dawn. All the days he'd spent feeling like a ghost inside his own skin. The inability to remember a sentence unless he read it 3 times. The phone numbers once carried in his head, which he now had to look up. A memory came then, one which simultaneously summed up a justified anger he felt as he looked at these bald creatures with their darkly golden eyes and almost blinding auras. He saw himself peering into the cupboard over his kitchen counter, looking for the powdered soup his tired, overstrained mind insisted must be in there someplace. He saw himself poking, pausing, then poking some more. He saw the expression on his face, a look of distant perplexity that could easily have been taken for mild mental retardation, but which was really simple exhaustion. Then he saw himself drop his hands and simply stand there, as if he expected the packet to jump out on its own. Not until now, at this moment and at this memory, did he realize how totally horrible the last few months had been. Looking back at them was like looking into a wasteland painted in desolate maroons and grays. So you took us onto the elevator, or maybe that wasn't good enough for the likes of us, and you just trotted us up the fire stairs. Got us acclimated a little at a time so we wouldn't strip our gears completely, I imagine. And it was easy. All you had to do was rob us of our sleep until we were half crazy. Lois's son and daughter-in-law want to put her in a theme park for geriatrics. Did you know that? And my friend Bill McGovern thinks I'm ready for Juniper Hill. Meanwhile, you little angels. Clotho's offered just a trace of his former wide smile. We're no angels, Ralph. Ralph, please don't shout at them. Yes, he had been shouting, and at least least some of it seemed to have gotten through to Faye. He had closed his chest book, stopped picking his nose, and was now sitting bolt upright in his chair, looking uneasily about the room. Ralph looked at Clotho, who took a step backward, losing what was left of his smile, to Lachesis. Your friend says you're not angels, so where are they? Playing poker 6 or 8 floors farther up, and I suppose God's in the penthouse, and the devil's stoking coal in the boiler room? No reply. Clotho and Lachesis glanced doubtfully at each other. Lois plucked at Ralph's sleeve, but he ignored her. So what are we supposed to do, guys? Track down your little boy version of Hannibal Lecter and take his scalpel away? Well, fuck you! Ralph would have turned on his heel and walked out then. He had seen a lot of movies and he knew a good exit line when he heard one, but Lois burst into shocked, frightened tears, and that held him where he was. The look of bewildered reproach in her eyes made him regret his outburst, at least a little. He slipped his arm back around Lois's shoulders and looked at the two bald men defiantly. They exchanged another glance, and some communication just above his and Lois's ability to hear and understand passed between them. When Lachesis turned to them again, he was smiling, but his eyes were grave. I hear your anger, Ralph, but it's not justified. You do not believe that now, but perhaps you may. For the time being, we must set your questions and our answers, such answers as we may give, aside. Why? Because the time of severing has come for this man. Watch closely, that you may learn and know. Clotho stepped to the left side of the bed. Lachesis approached from the right, walking through Faye Chapin as he went. Faye bent over, afflicted with a sudden coughing fit, and then opened his book of chess problems again as it eased. Ralph, I can't watch this. I can't watch them do it. But Ralph thought she would, but he thought they both would. He held her tighter as Clotho and Lachesis bent over Jim V. Their faces were lit with love and caring gentleness. They made Ralph think of the faces that he had once seen in Rembrandt painting. The Night Watch. He thought it had been called. Their oars mingled and overlapped above Jimmy's chest, and suddenly the man in the bed opened his eyes. He looked through the two little bald doctors at the ceiling for a moment. His expression vague and puzzled, and his gaze shifted toward the door, and he smiled. "Hey, look who's here!" Jimmy V exclaimed. His voice was rusty and choked, but Ralph could still hear his South Boston wise guy accent, where here came out here. Faye jumped. The book of chess problems tumbled out of his lap and fell on the floor. He leaned over and took Jimmy's hand, but Jimmy ignored him and kept looking across the room at Ralph and Lois. It's Ralph Roberts and Paul Chase's wife, Whittam. Say, Ralphie, do you remember the day we tried to get into that tent revival so we could hear him sing Amazing Grace? I remember, Jimmy. Jimmy appeared to smile, and then his eyes slipped closed again. Lachesis placed his hands against the dying man's cheeks and moved his head a bit, like a barber getting ready to shave a customer. At the same moment, Clotho leaned even closer, opening his scissors and slid them forward so that the long blades held Jimmy V's black balloon string. As Clotho closed the scissors, Lachesis leaned forward and kissed Jimmy's forehead. Go in peace, my friend. There was a small, unimportant snick sound. The segment of balloon string above the scissors drifted up toward the ceiling and disappeared. The death bag in which Jimmy V lay turned a momentary bright white, then winked out of existence, just as Rosalie's had done earlier that evening. Jimmy opened his eyes again and looked. He looked at Faye. He started to smile. Ralph thought, and then his gaze turned fixed in distance. The dimples, which had begun to form at the corners of his mouth, smoothed out. Jimmy? Faye shook Jimmy V's shoulder, running his hand through Lachesis' side to do it. You all right, Jimmy? Oh, shit. Faye got up and left the room, not quite running. Clotho, do you see and understand that what we do with love and respect? That we are, in fact, the physicians of last resort. It is vital to our dealings with you, Ralph and Lois, that you understand that. Yes. Yes. Ralph didn't intend to agree with anything either one of them said, but that phase, the physicians of last resort, sliced cleanly and effortlessly through his anger. It felt true. They had had freed... Where the heck did it go? They had freed Jimmy V from a world where there was nothing left for him but pain. Yes, they had undoubtedly stood in room 317 with Ralph on a sleety afternoon some 7 months ago and given Carol the same release. And yes, they went about their work with love and respect. Any doubts he might have had on that score had been laid to rest when Lachesis kissed Jimmy V. But did love and respect give them the right to put him and Lois too through hell, and give them the right to send them after a supernatural being that had gone off the rails? Did it give them the right to even dream that two ordinary people, neither of them young anymore, could deal with such a creature? Lachesis, let's move on from this place. It's going to fill up with people and we need to talk. Do we have any choice? Their answers, yes, of course. There is always a choice. Came back quickly, colored with overtones of surprise. Clotho and Lachesis walked toward the door. Ralph and Lois shrank back to let them pass. The auras of the little bald doctors swept over them for a moment, however, and Ralph registered them in taste and texture. The taste of sweet apples and the texture of light bark. As they laughed side by side, speaking gravely and respectfully to each other, they came back in, now accompanied by a pair of nurses. These newcomers passed through Lachesis and Clotho, then through Ralph and Lois, without slowing or seeming to notice anything toward. In the hall outside, life went on at its usual muted pace. No buzzers went off, no lights flashed, no orderlies came sprinting down the hallway, pushing the crash wagon ahead of them. No one cried, "Stat!" over the loudspeaker. Death was too common a visitor here for such things. Ralph guessed that it was not welcome even under such circumstances as these, but it was familiar and accepted. He also guessed that Jimmy V would have been happy enough with his exit from the 3rd floor of Derry home. He had done it with no fuss or bother, and he hadn't had to show anyone either his driver's license or his Blue Cross major medical card. He had died with a dignity that simple, expected things often hold. 1 or 2 moments of consciousness, accompanied by a slightly wider perception of what was going on around him, and then proof. Pack up all my care and woe, Blackbird. Bye-bye. We're at section 4, but on that note, boys and girls, we are going to go to our second music break with once more the lovely and talented Miss Mia Savage. And she is going to be singing Bury Me in Heaven, Singing to Your Grave, Not a Phase, and The Bottom Line. Oh, I thought we already listened to The Bottom Line, but I don't think we did. Yep. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this music break.
of nothing. Just a choice right now between fear and love. Choice right now between fear and love.
Welcome back, guys, gals, ghouls, lesbians, foes, whoever may be listening still. I was going to continue to read, but we're at a pretty good stopping point in this book tonight, so I figured I might as well share a video with you. And this is from James LaFleur's That's Impossible channel. And he put this out 2 weeks ago. I looked through my email. I'm hoping I didn't share this already before, but we'll see what happens. Oh, let me also go ahead and mute the sound on this.
In just a few moments.
Ah!
There's a fly!
Hi, I'm James LaFleur and you're watching the Impossible channel. Welcome aboard. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications on for more videos like this. So this year's been a really strange one, and I guess next year will be even stranger. And I'll be here with you guys to bring you the creepiest, the strangest, and the most mind-blowing videos ever. But before that, I've prepared a compilation of the best videos featured on the channel in 2024. And I hope you guys have a really good Christmas time, a happy new year, and well, better get that popcorn and sit tight, because this is gonna be a wild ride. Are you guys ready? Well, let's go.
Let's do this.
On January 2024, YouTuber Ciaz was exploring the woods with a couple of friends of his when all of a sudden they came face to face with a very creepy situation. Now, YouTuber Ciaz is usually exploring abandoned places with his friends in Belgium or in other places in Europe. In most of his videos, things end up very well. They sometimes bump into homeless people or strangers, but that's about it. However, on January 2024, things did not go as expected.
You guys remember this one?
It all started a couple of weeks prior when they decided to go vlogging and camping in the woods, something a little bit different from what they were used to doing. In this particular case, things ended up well, and they had a very nice experience while camping and vlogging.
Dankjewel. Dan waren wij toch niet de enige dan.
So a couple of weeks after, they decided to go back, and this is when things take a very dark turn.
We zijn hier onderweg naar de verlaten camping, man. Een verlaten camping midden in het bos. Zie we schijnt daar met zijn pillamp. We rijden hier gewoon. Kijk, ja, dat is toch eng? Creepy. Pikken donker. En oh. We gaan een plek zoeken om even te parkeren hier langs de baan.
While searching for the most abandoned place in the woods, they start hearing what sounds like a dog barking in the distance.
Dit is wel spannend, ja. Wacht, kijk hoor. Echt. Oh, man. Dit is... Dat is een mechelaar of zo. Nee.
Now, taking into consideration that it's really late at night, and that this is the same campsite that they had spent the night a couple of weeks prior, they become a bit freaked out. But they must find a safe spot to camp, so they decide to take a quick look around, and this is what happens.
Ja, hoor die hond, ja. Hier is de ingang, de poort. Ja, dat staat echt duidelijk privaat op. Privaat, dit is een plaats van gebed. Gelief onze ruimte respecteren, gebed. En daar staat op, pas op, waakhond. Ik ben hier heel lang geleden eens geweest en stond hier vol met bungalows, met campings, met caravans, mobile homes, midden in het bos, allemaal verspreid, super vet. En ineens is hier een waakhond.
Ja, hier staat dat bordje met dat.
Ja.
Als je nu hier zo inslagen, zonder dat wegje zet je ook gewoon binnen.
Ja, dat is waar, want dat is niet afgezet, hè. Als je verder parkeert en je wandelt hier binnen.
Waar zag je die staan?
Die staat daar zo bij een hutje. Maar dat is hier veranderd tot een gebedding, want wat staat hierop? Dit is een gebedplaats.
Maar dat is gewoon tak.
Ja, dat hebben ze hier gewoon zelf gemaakt. Kijk, dat is maar dat is hier gewoon een zigeunerkamp of een hippie-camping of zo geworden.
Hallo?
Ja,
Mogen wij hier
ja,
wandelen?
hoort je het? Die deur, die wint niet. Ik hoor zo... Zeker?
Little by little, Sias and his friends began feeling as if they were not supposed to be there, and this is when they start hearing what sounds like voices coming from the woods.
Ik hoor van alles hier. Dit is zo eng. Oh, maat.
Hallo? Mogen wij hier binnenkomen?
Hey?
Dit is zo creepy, maat. Dit is zo creepy.
At this point, Sias and his friends were too curious to go back, and even though it was very clear that someone didn't want them there, they went ahead. Needless to say, it didn't take long before they regretted the decision, and this is what they caught on camera. Check this out.
What the f... Dat is toch niet mijn auto of zo, hè? Hier, maat. Hier wordt letterlijk iemand gemarteld. Hier wordt letterlijk iemand gemarteld in de bos. Dit is heel... Hallo? 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 What the... What the... Hey!
I'm saying, like, people are way scarier than ghosts.
Now completely freaked out, Sias and his friends run as fast as they can from an angry woman that appears to be carrying an axe. After finding what they consider to be a safe spot, they call the police.
Rode auto met witte letters. Daar achterop. Ja. Ja, iets verder, maar ik kan...
Shortly after, the police arrives and arrests the woman, and this is the moment where Sias and his friends notice that the woman keeps staring at them with this psychotic smile. They also noticed that she had messed with their car and removed the license plates, most likely with some sort of sinister intention. Luckily for them, everything ended up okay, but this is the sort of situation you see in horror movies, and it doesn't always end up like this. So I want to know your thoughts. What do you think they should have done differently, and what would you have done in their place?
Stick a stick in her tire.
From simple pixels to jaw-dropping virtual worlds, video games have come a long way very fast. It's mind-blowing to think that we're nearing a point where telling games apart from real life might get tricky. Imagine slipping on a VR headset and not being able to figure out if you're in your living room or in a game. In 10 to 20 years, we might not even be able to differentiate reality from a digital simulation. And it's exactly this kind of thought that makes us wonder if we're not already living inside of a digital simulation built by an advanced civilization. Since the topic first became popular in 1999 with the movie The Matrix, several people started coming up with the strangest of theories. And even though some of these ideas may sound far-fetched, I'm gonna show you guys a couple of videos that may actually prove that they're not.
Ay, pero por mucho, ¿por qué hacen Mira. Mira, hasta hacen aureolas.
Estoy diciendo que mira que de humo hay. Ya, David, porque puede explotar ahí.
It doesn't just appear.
So we'll have to come around. It's not that.
There it is.
Where?
Look.
Oh, let this guy go.
Did you not just see that?
No, are you filming?
Look
so
up,
I
look
can
up,
see?
look up.
Where am I looking?
Look! There's a floating tree.
In this next video, a man is holding a cat inside of a supermarket when all of a sudden, this happens. Did you see that? If you watch his hands closely, it's as if one of his fingers starts being pulled, but by something invisible. If we slow-mo and rewind the video, you'll see that there's not much of an explanation to what's going on here. Some internet users believe it's a cramp. Others believe it could be related to paranormal activity, or even maybe a glitch in the simulation. But when it comes to glitches in the Matrix, it doesn't stop there. An internet account that goes by the name of Dada Mudda usually posts vlog-type videos, either with his friends or family, which includes his wife and his daughter. In one specific video, he's doing one of these TikTok dances when this happens.
What a cutie.
Did you see that? Well, it looks like a hand can be seen reaching for Dada's shoulder, but there's no one behind him. And if we slow-mo and rewind the video, you can see it very clearly. After being posted, the video amassed millions of views and thousands of comments, and internet users were completely baffled. Some believe that this is some sort of glitch in the Matrix, while others state that this is possibly a real person inside the room with them. The only problem is, Dada usually makes videos either with his wife and daughter or his best friend. And in this case, I don't see who could be inside the room with them. Being that the hands are really small and seem to be using some sort of red nail polish, I would say that's not his wife. So if his daughter is already in the video, whose hand is it? Not only that, the hand seems to go by unnoticed by Dada or his brother. And in a second video, he confirms that there were only the three of them in that room. So what's going on here? But it's not just at home that these mysterious glitches occur. Rainy Lamers was with a co-worker at her job. They were both typing at the computer. Rainy got up and threw a notepad across the room, expecting it to land on a nearby desk. What happens next left her and the entire internet completely baffled. Did you see that? If we slow-mo and replay the video, it's as if the notepad completely disappeared into thin air. Completely baffled by what she saw, Rainey later posted the video to the internet and it caught a lot of attention, and many internet users were trying to find an explanation for it. Some stated that the notepad might have landed on one of the slots or next to the AC. Others left comments stating that they've already witnessed something like this before. One states, "I once dropped an entire bowl of cereal and watched it fall with my friend, and there was nothing on the ground." What's weird is that it's not just one comment. It seems that loads of people have witnessed something similar during their lifetimes. Strange, isn't it? Is it possible that the notepad really disappeared into thin air? If we slow-mo and zoom in on the video, you can see that it doesn't land on a slot or next to the AC. It really looks as if it disappeared into thin air. But what's going on here? Is this a legit glitch in the Matrix? An alternate universe, a portal maybe? Or something else entirely? What's your take? Now when it comes to outdoor activities, Mount San Jacinto is a go-to destination for hikers and nature lovers. Located in Southern California, Mount San Jacinto is a beautiful place surrounded by wildlife and towering forests. And every year, around 200,000 people visit this region with the intention of camping, hiking, that sort of thing. But besides all of its beauty lies a very dark mystery. It's also known to be a hotspot for mysterious sightings and unexplained disappearances. For instance, in 2020, there were a series of hikers that went missing for unknown reasons, and these cases remain unsolved to this day. There are several theories to why this happens in this particular region, ranging from dangerous people who live in the area to unexplained phenomena. It was also in 2020 that a series of unexplained phenomena happened in the region.
This changing different shapes, bro. It was just a circle.
Weird.
Look!
On October 14th that same year, a YouTuber by the name of Mario Jimenez was driving to work on Route 62 when all of a sudden he spots something odd nearby. He gets his camera and immediately begins to record, and this is what he saw.
Here's damn info. It's like the ones I see here, for the most part. The other ones have been like those plasma orb thingies. I always just call them alien orbs.
What appears to be a massive unknown object can be seen hovering nearby, and after posting the video to YouTube, it left internet users baffled but a bit divided.
Super weird.
Some believe that this is a blimp, and it actually looks as if it could be, while others state that a blimp wouldn't be flying that close to so many wind turbines, which kinda makes sense. However, if we try to zoom in and replay the video a couple of times, it's very difficult to affirm if this is indeed a blimp or something else entirely. But this is not the first time something like this happens in this region of California. In 2022, a mysterious phenomenon was seen by many different people in Palmdale, just 100 miles north from Mount San Jacinto, and this is what was caught on camera.
Wow.
Yo, what? Dude.
Okay.
Guys, I want a picture with all our kids. Meteor shower. It's not a meteor.
In this particular video, a family was celebrating a birthday party when all of a sudden they
try.
spot dozens, if not hundreds, of luminous objects nearby. At first, they thought it could be fireworks, maybe a meteor shower, or something like that. But this is when they start realizing that this thing does not behave like anything they had ever seen before.
Yeah, they're moving. They're not going straight.
The thing is, that night, many other people noticed the same mysterious phenomenon in other places in Palmdale. Check this out.
It is weird, man. What the hell is it? I mean, the one over there looks like it's moving like...
It's not burning up. So that's so trippy.
Yes, it is.
Oh my god, where's Daddy? Oh my god, I got goosebumps.
Papa! Come here, hurry!
Tell Jody and them.
What is that? What is that? Hurry! Hurry!
What is that?
Marcus? We just went to Marcus. So it's not.
Are they lanterns?
No. Something good.
Whatever these things are, it seems that most people agree that these are not lanterns, balloons, nor anything like that. So, what are they?
I know what they are. I know what they are.
They're gone. They're still there. They're farther away.
Now, what makes this all very interesting is that just recently something very similar was seen in Wichita, but this time during the day. Check this out.
Does anyone have any idea what's flying over Wichita right now? I just was on a walk and I saw these out to the west, and I thought they were birds or balloons at first, but they're moving in a perfectly straight line with no flapping or anything like that, so not a clue what they could be. They're flying very smoothly though.
In this particular video, an internet account by the name of Velo Ace captures something really strange in Wichita. Now, according to Velo Ace, these are not balloons nor drones, and at first, I did think it could be just a balloon launch. If you take a look at videos of hundreds of balloons flying, it actually looks as if it could be the same thing. But then I noticed something strange. If we compare the object's speed with the building that's static on the ground, it seems as if the objects are moving too fast to be balloons. Not only that, they appear to be flying in formation and not erratically like balloons would. And they don't seem to be drones to me, but I could be wrong. So if these things are not drones nor balloons, what are they? Strange, isn't it? But here's where things take an even stranger turn. A couple of weeks after, a landscaper known as Ivan Green was working somewhere in Guadalajara, Mexico, when all of a sudden him and his team noticed something very odd, something that wasn't supposed to be there. This is what they saw.
Is that a salsa? Oh wow.
Un objeto volador.
It's one of those shapeshifter ones.
Did you see that? What appears to be a mysterious round object can be seen spinning silently in the sky. After being posted to the internet, it amassed thousands of views and hundreds of comments, and most people were completely baffled by it. However, there were some people who stated that this is possibly an upside-down umbrella that was somehow uplifted by the wind current. So I began researching the topic and I found more videos, and in them, it's not very clear that this is an upside-down umbrella, even though it could be.
Where's the handle?
Now, if all of this weren't strange enough, it gets even stranger. After replaying a couple of these videos in slow-mo, I found out that in the very beginning of Ivan Green's video, we can see two small objects crossing the sky at very high speed. Now, taking into consideration that the average speed of a small bird is between 10 to 30 miles an hour, it's very possible that these are not birds. It could be something else entirely. But the question is, what and why were they flying next to this mysterious object that some believe to be an upside-down umbrella? But I want to know your take. Why do you think Mount San Jacinto is such a weird place full of strange phenomena? And do you think that this is an upside-down umbrella, or is it something else entirely? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a really big fan of hiking in the woods. For those who want to escape a little bit from this technological and urban life, it's a perfect outdoor activity. Just so you have an idea, around 120 million people go hiking every year. There are many places all over the world for one to go hiking or camping to see the stars or spend a really good time with friends or family. And even though hiking or trekking are statistically safer than spending a night in the city, it sometimes doesn't go as planned, and things can get a bit creepy. And this is exactly what happened with a couple who decided to go camping and then hiking deep in the woods. This is what they caught on camera.
Oh my god, look at that dog. Dude, so many good memories. Oh, frick, sticks everywhere. Look at this little hobbit hole. Oh my god. Are you okay?
I got hit in the face with a stick.
Haley, wait. That's a bear. Haley, that's a bear. Haley. What the? Dude, that's not a freaking bear. Dude, that's not a freaking bear. Dude.
That was Bigfoot.
At first, the couple thinks that what they're seeing is a bear. But if we zoom in and slow-mo the video, we can clearly see that whatever it is that they're looking at looks like a Sasquatch. At the time, they did what anyone would do. They tried to capture it on camera as much as they could. But when they finally realize that they're too close to it and that this thing is standing up on its own two legs, they get the heck out of there as fast as possible. Unfortunately, there's not much information about this video, but most internet users agree that this is possibly a legit Sasquatch sighting. But when it comes to creepy and unexplained encounters in the woods, it doesn't stop there. A YouTube channel by the name of Creepy Outdoors 4451 is used to recording videos of his hiking and camping trips. And in one particular video, something really strange happens.
Wow. No life. Let's see how this place looks like without any lights.
As I suspected.
Pitch black. I should get back to camp soon.
At this point, YouTuber Creepy Outdoors had been walking for quite a while deep into the dark woods. And while testing out his new flashlight, he realizes that he was a bit lost. So being an experienced camper and hiker, he calmly tries to find his way back to the campsite. And this is when he caught something chilling on camera. Check this out.
Wow. This is always fun. Another tree, completely rooted.
probably a
I'm not
property
getting
line
lost here.
for Sasquatch there.
I'm pretty sure camp is back this way. Should have brought a GPS. I'm not sure if you guys ever seen the Blair Witch Project, but damn, this is just giving me Blair Witch Project vibes. Super cool. Wow.
Just another
This
sign,
is
those
awesome.
bent over trees.
Well, at least it'll be a lot easier to walk through here. Oh, hi. What the hell? I need to get out of here. Oh, boy. Ooh. Okay.
By now, even an experienced camper or hiker would be completely creeped out, and this is exactly what happened with Creepy Outdoors 4451. Needless to say, he got the heck out of there as fast as possible and successfully returned to his campsite. But if I were him, I would have not camped there at all that night. Whatever it was that he encountered that night, this ghostly voice could have been a person trying to follow him around, or maybe even, according to popular legend, a skinwalker or a wendigo trying to lure him into the woods. But when it comes to these creepy encounters, it doesn't stop there.
What the heck? Is that a rake?
This next picture was taken by Barb Stanbrook Schmidt while hiking in Vancouver Island in October last year. She was with a group of people and they were near Englishman River when all of a sudden they noticed what looked like a humanoid creature staring back at them. At the time, she didn't even think of recording it with her phone camera, but she was fast enough to take a picture of it. This particular picture is going viral on Reddit and many other social medias as possibly a legit picture of what looks like Bigfoot.
Weird.
Now, even though a picture could have been easily edited and photoshopped, it does give out creepy vibes to it. But when it comes to creepy videos caught in the woods, I guess that one of the most unexplained that I've seen so far was captured by Alejandro Soto Vives in Sumidero Canyon in Mexico. Now, Sumidero Canyon is a very beautiful place located in southern Mexico, and there are quite a few myths and tales about this particular place. Alejandro and his friends had just reached the top of Sumidero Canyon, and this was when all of a sudden they spotted what looked like some sort of humanoid creature swimming on the river below, and this is what they caught on camera.
That's weird. What is that? Maybe they just assumed it was a boat or something? Whatever it is isn't moving.
Did you see that? What at first looks like a mermaid or some sort of humanoid creature can be seen swimming in the lake. After Alejandro posted the video to his social media, it caught a lot of attention and most internet users were divided. Some believe that this is just a boat, while others state that this is possibly a mermaid, an hangin, or something else entirely. Other internet users even pointed out that at 19 seconds into the video, we can see what looks like some sort of saucer-shaped object crossing the sky very quickly. Some other people also left comments stating that they have also witnessed something strange in Sumidero Canyon. In other words, it seems that this place is a hotspot for mysterious and unexplained things.
I was out here fishing and sirens came from this island. I swear to God, I have it on video. I'm gonna play it shortly.
But when it comes to these mysterious sightings pertaining mermaids, there was one that happened recently in the Gulf of Mexico and it was posted by Magpie7. This is what she caught on camera.
Okay, for real though, my cast is gonna be gone. And she's nothing on your hook. I have a worm. Guys, do you hear this? And we're the only ones out here witnessing this in the entire world right now.
Did you hear that? What sounds like loud, screeching sounds can be clearly heard in Mag's video, and at the time, Mag and her friend were completely creeped out about it. After posting the video, there were thousands of comments of people who believe that this could be a djinn. Others think that this could be a mermaid due to the legends and myths that portray mermaids as beings who sometimes try to lure people into the ocean, screaming or singing just like a human being would. Now, taking into consideration that Mag and her friend were trying to find whoever or whatever was screeching out loud and they didn't, this could possibly be a djinn or maybe a mermaid. So I searched up for mermaid videos, and what I found was something very similar to the sounds that they were hearing.
Can you hear me? Yo, that's instantaneous, bro. Oh, I gotta watch my step out here, man. God.
Listen to the sirens.
The video that you're seeing was recorded by Sauce90, a fisherman whose account was later banned for mysterious reasons.
I hear him. Where's he at? What is that noise, bro? What is that noise?
I want to know your thoughts. Do you think that Alejandro and Mag might have actually encountered a mermaid? Or was it maybe something else entirely? In 1991, a mysterious sound coined the upsweep was recorded by researchers, and to this day, no one has an idea of what it could be. The sound was recorded somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, and to this day, no one has any idea of its origin. This, for instance, is the same sound sped up 16 times. Check this out. There was also one recorded in 1997 coined the bloop. Now, these unexplained sounds and mysterious ocean phenomena spark several speculations that range from an advanced civilization inhabiting the sea to unknown creatures lurking in the depths or even secret underwater bases. But I want to know your take. Do you think that Pasalo65's video and the mysterious discovery of these underwater pyramids in Cuba could help prove the existence of an ancient civilization that once existed in the Gulf of Mexico? And could this
Aliens have
somehow be
definitely been
connected
around for
to the
longer than they
myth of
say.
Atlantis? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Yeah.
Now, taking into consideration that privacy is a really big concern in today's world, I guess that one of the most common fears when renting an Airbnb is actually being watched by a hidden camera, or even worse.
No idea if this was a live camera. We had no idea if someone was actually watching
And I
us.
guess this is exactly what happened with an internet account by the name of the Brandon Robert. He was staying at an Airbnb with his girlfriend, and it was late at night, and they were changing channels on the television when all of a sudden this happens.
We're staying at an Airbnb and we're flipping through the channels.
What is that? Is that ours?
It hasn't moved. We're too scared to get up.
Is it our toilet?
I'm gonna throw up. She's walking to the bathroom now. And we're gonna...
Oh no.
At this point,
Gotta
they do what
peep her.
anyone would do. They head over to the bathroom to test if this was indeed a hidden camera in their bathroom, and this is what happens.
Are you in there? Babe. Babe.
You're joking, right?
It's right from there. There's like vents.
It has to be up in this part above.
Unable to open the vent, Brandon and his girlfriend get the heck out of there as fast as possible. Creepy,
Seriously.
isn't it? But Brandon's case isn't the only one.
We are at our Airbnb. Tell me that is not a camera.
Hi, we think our Airbnb has hidden cameras, and I feel like I'm being watched, and I just do not feel safe in my Airbnb.
TikTok user Kaylin Bossy had rented an Airbnb with a couple of friends of hers, and everything was going as it should, up until the moment
she's
they
so
spot
bossy.
what they believed to be a hidden camera. So they did something different than what most people would do, and they called the cops, and this is what happened.
Is she gonna hold me wrong? I don't know.
So that's what it should look like.
We are not going to contact the host. We are contacting Airbnb to see if they can send somebody out, because if the host did plant this, we don't want them to mess with anything or like hide the fact that they did put a camera in there.
After checking every corner, the cops come to the conclusion that the house may be indeed bugged with some sort of hidden camera, something advanced that they had never seen
We
before.
still don't know if it is a camera or not, but we are talking to multiple electricians, and a lot of people are saying like it really could, like there's a very good possibility it is. But again, we have not had anybody come look at it yet because we have not been in our room because we are scared to be there. So by tomorrow we should have like an actual update.
Unfortunately, Kaylin never uploaded an update on the situation, but I want to know your thoughts. Do you think that this could actually be a hidden camera?
have an
And do you
awesome
think
week.
that
Go
calling the
work too hard.
cops was the right
Secure
thing
my
to do?
use. And once more, happy New
On
Year.
January 2024, Luisa Dominguez and her family decided to travel to Pigeon Forge in Tennessee. Now, Pigeon Forge is a very small town with a population of about 6,000